most of the times they were in Mandarin, subtitled in Cantonese, so we would understand nothing of the dialogues, but it was great. So when I started preparation, he told me, you have to be like the Kung Fu movies with the art of the musicals, right? So in martial arts, you have martial arts. And most of the people, when karate, jiu-jitsu, judo, so they retain martial, right? But it's art. So he was very in advance for his time because he wanted beautiful fights. But and I had to do so. I had my master Jean-Pierre Vigneault. I trained with him like 5 or 6 days a week, 2-3 hours when you're 12 years old with him. We're still friends. He still has his club here, and he's a great pedagogue. He gives classes to kids, and all this fantastic. So we worked 2 years very hard, and at the same time I had acrobatics training once or twice a week, and I also had a guy because Paul was supposed to be super developed also mentally. So I had a teacher who, in addition to school, would give me classes. In a different way at school. So instead of treating just one theme, he would take one element. I always give the same example. We take the ant. That's the theme of the work with him, and it was like something that how it opens. It was a very like a flower opening teacher. So we would draw the ants. So I would learn the drawing, right? And we would study the anatomy of the ants and then the social structure of the ants' house. And all the animals who eat the ants and how. So it was always like he would take one element and from there he would pull to in a way to make me learn and understand how things are connected. In fact, because we're used to learn by sections, right? Where he would like kind of make me see how the universe is the stars, it's astronomy, it's all that, but it's also mathematics, but it's also light, so it's related to photography. And right, that was the work. We trained very hard. I prepared very hard. My father worked very hard. Well, I think for now with the documentary, if you haven't seen it, Jodorowsky's Dune. Everything is explained. That is a great documentary made by Frank Pavlich, a guy from New York. But there you can see the team he gathered. That in those days, it was the first movie that was made like this with Moebius, with Giger, with Chris Foss. So they go see the machines. But at the end, the storyboard was ready. I could read the storyboard. So the storyboard, for people who don't know, storyboard is like the movie, like in a comic book. Like it's a preparation thing when you have all the shots, what's going to be in the shots, all the dialogues. It's like the movie drawing, right? Frame by frame, a big book like this. And so the movie was ready to shoot. They just had to enter production, and for that they needed American money, and the Americans didn't want to give the money. Because that's how Americans are. Because the cinema is an industry, it's a crooked industry, and I think that probably the French producer, the guy who was producing this, in very good will, and maybe he had to do it. He gave this storyboard to 5 big major studios like Paramount and Warner Brothers and all that because he was looking for them. They said no, but they read very well the storyboard. So you find elements of my father's project, obviously in Star Wars and many science fiction movies that came after that. And they also took the team. I mean, Alien, for example, they took Dan O'Bannon, they took Moebius. In fact, I think that the Americans they wanted the movie, but they didn't want Jodorowsky because he was weird. He was doing another kind of cinema. Maybe some people thought he was crazy or uncontrollable. Or sometimes my father would say some exaggerated things that maybe didn't serve him very well. Like I want to do a 14-hour movie. So in those to 1974, I mean, people say this guy is nuts and it's going to be impossible. So maybe he shouldn't have made those statements, right? Maybe. But in a way, I think he was a little bit ahead of his time, because today with the series, movies are 14 hours time. I mean, In Treatment is 20 hours long story, right? So that's just by episodes. Or now you have like the Marvel superhero things. It's all a sequel of a sequel of a sequel, right? And if you haven't seen the Thor movie, you do not understand the Captain America movie. And so it's, it was just, but in those days, it was not the moment. And to be very honest, when he announced me that the project will not be done, obviously I was like, oh my God, all this work, all this preparation that I did, like more than 2 years to get ready. I'm ready, and we're not doing it, right? But on the other hand, I was old enough to understand how he could be disappointed, which would be maybe a bigger disappointment than mine. Well, another kind of disappointment. Well, he was director and the guy who dreamed by this project. So, and at that age, I was starting to, my hormones being there, I was starting to be interested in something else than making a movie. I was more interested in friends and girlfriends and my adolescent life, and not being so much my father's son, right? Being myself and all this. So that kind of helped, And I also always say that, in a way, if you want to see it in a positive way, now that the documentary came out, if my father had made the movie, maybe in that moment it would have been very good, very interesting, or maybe very bad. I don't know. We can't know. But today it would be totally outdated, because the techniques of cinema, the images, we didn't have that in 1974, 75, right? So there's one thing that is more powerful than any movie, is our imagination. So when you see Jodorowsky's Dune, you fill the gaps, just like I was saying I fill the knife, this, and right? So you fill the gaps and you make the movement. So Jodorowsky's Dune, you have some images of the script, the description of what the movie was going to be, the actor who was preparing, the crew who got everything ready, and you fill the gaps, right? And your imagination is fantastic, because you are imagining Jodorowsky's Dune by you. And it's not the same that I imagine, or anyone in the audience there today imagines. And it's necessarily better than it could be. So now it became a mythical project. Oh, too bad they didn't do it. But now it's, I'm sorry, I love the Villeneuve's cinema. I'm a fan of Arrival, and I liked very much his first part of Dune. But it will never be better than the fantasy of Jodorowsky's Dune, because we all make it with our imagination. You see what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And I also wish there was Jodorowsky's Dune, and also he showed the film.
Yes, but today it would be very bad.
I don't know.
it would be outdated. It would be outdated. I mean, in those days, what did you have as special effects? You had 2001. But in 2001, you see just with the ship a little bit, and you can see that it's a plastic ship, and the interior, right? But we didn't have the technique in those days of even of the first Star Wars. And if you today you look at the first Star Wars, it looks old now. It's very vintage, right?
Yeah.
Okay. One or two more. The light is going away. I'm sorry. It's because the night is arriving here. What else?
So I read that you and your father also directed a play called La Gorille, and
yes, The Gorilla. Yes, so, yeah, we did that play together. It's based on a Franz Kafka story, and I've been playing this for a very long time now. We started. I started playing this in 2008, and I've done more than 380 performances in French, most of them, but also English, for a festival I did in the UK, and in Spanish. I played in Buenos Aires, in Chile. I went to Beirut, even a long time ago before the big explosion of the port. Yeah, and we started playing Italian. So, yeah, I love this play, and for now, I'm still open to play it. So, if you want to organize in a big, nice theater, a well-paid performance of the gorilla in Israel, hey, go do that. It's a play. I played it so much. I always say that the character knows me better than I know the character. Yeah.
How was the experience working together from the other side, not in the acting side, but sitting in a director chair together?
No, he's the director of the play.
He's the director. Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
He adapted the story of Franz Kafka, who is a communication to the Academy of a gorilla who is captured in the forest, and in the trip to Hamburg, where he's going to go to the zoo, he observes humans that are not in a cage, so he makes an effort, and he manages to learn to talk. So in Hamburg, when he arrived, instead of going to the zoo, he becomes a music hall phenomenon. So that's the story of Kafka, and my father gave it pronounced it to another point. And then when we decided to do the play, I worked a little bit with him on the Spanish version, which he writes in Spanish. I just asked him to change the end, which he did. And so now the end is really beautiful. And when we did the play in French, first we started in Italian, and then we did the play in French. So I translated the play, and when I translated the play, I readapted not the text, but the vocabulary, the structure, and all that. So when I played in Spanish, I retranslated the text from French to Spanish again to put inside of that the stylistic things like vocabulary and technical things for the lines for acting. It's a very physical play. But that's the third theater play we did together. First we did the Topo, and I have a little scene in Holy Mountain. And then we started to working together with a play that I played with my two brothers and our partners of those days. We're all split since. This was, we did this in Italy and France with a tour. Then I made another play that he directed and he wrote with an Italian actress in Italy and in Mexico. And then he proposed me to do the gorilla. So we always say it's a show by Alejandro Brontis because I'm the actor and it's a monologue, and he directed the scenery, the lines, and he directed me, but also there was a lot of improvisation in the acting, so it was something that we built kind of together. But he's a director. In the title, he's a director, and I'm the actor.
So we have a little time for some questions.
But it was a great experience. We worked very well together. As artistically, we have a great relationship. Someone in the audience wants to ask something.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask, so I want to see them.
I promise I will make short answers.
It doesn't have to be short. If you're willing to tell your perspective about the meaning of the movie of El Topo, is the hero there going on a quest to the desert, and what is the meaning of this quest story?
Did you hear him, or I need to?
No, you have to repeat that. I don't get it.
Okay, he asked if you can tell what's your interpretation of the meaning of the film El Topo.
Oh, I promised a short answer. Well, my feeling is that it's a story of failure. The character fails twice. First, he doesn't become the great master because at the end, he meets the guy who shoots himself that you lost. So big crisis. Then he becomes this other character that's more like a saint, that also wants to be the one who solves everything. But at the end, he fails. Everybody gets shot. There's good intention and very funny, but down deep, if you look at it, he fails. Right? The people who he takes them out of the caves, of the cavern, but they get shot by the people of the town, and then he gets shot. Then he shoots everybody. Great solution. Right? Shooting everybody is not a solution. And so then he decides to give up life. Also, he renounces, so he said this is illusion, etc. That's my feeling, to make it short. And I think it corresponds to where he was in that moment. He was desperately looking for an answer to something, to answer to a world where he felt different and adapted, and that world was wrong for him. But it's a movie with a lot of shouting. Violence, breaking the walls. Well, what can I say? That's my feeling of the moment. It's about there's a lot of very beautiful things in the movie, obviously. But down deep is the story of a double failure and impotence. He doesn't have the power to change things. So he gives up. And maybe it's a very beautiful end. I give up to this illusion of the world, right? But it's a very individualistic solution from my perspective, from my point of view. I don't think that the solution is giving up. But that's me.
Do you have another question?
שאלת המשך, איך הוא רואה את המסע של הדמות שלו?
So, how do you see, how do you envision your character's quest in the film?
In El Topo?
Yeah.
I've never thought about it like that. Maybe because when I see the movie, I see myself, and then I see another actor. I have a difficulty to I haven't taken really that distance. And when I see myself in the movie, it gives me memories of the shooting of the movie. But down at the end, I mean, if I follow the thread of my thinking of what I said before, at the end, the son goes away with the little woman and the baby, right? Because there's a baby, and he goes to the world. They built a little family there, so we don't know where they're going, what they're going to do. So maybe there's a little hope. Now, on a more let's say psychological point of view, my father has. If you saw The Dance of Reality, I don't know if you have seen this movie, where it's a movie about his childhood in which I play my father's father, Jaime. He exposes how, in a very metaphorical and exaggerated way, how the relationship he had with his father, right, which was not a loving relationship. And I feel that all his life my father has been fighting his father, the father figure, right? You can see that also at in other of his works, and also how he relates to the art world, right? He wants to beat Fellini, that he admires, but like, for example, right? So in the movie, okay, when you have a filmmaker that is an artist filmmaker, you know, movies is a light that is projected to a screen. It's a projection. So the director, the creator of a movie, projects himself. You know, when you dream, everything you dream is an expression of yourself. The monster who wants to eat you in your dream is an aspect of yourself. It's a message of your subconscious that talks to you. The character who is afraid of being eaten is you also, obviously. So in the movie, every character is an aspect of the movie director. So that character is not me, the son's character. The son's character is my father. It's Alejandro Jodorowsky, the director, as much as El Topo character. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For example, I've been very often asked if I was not shocked or traumatized by the first scene. You're 7 years old, today you're 7 years old, bury your first toy and the portrait of your mother. Oh my God, you must have been shocked doing that scene. That's people who don't understand how cinema is made, because it took us a day to shoot that scene. From the side, so it's not a real experience. You're not really traumatized. Cut, there's a noise, the lens cleaning. You're not living that, right? It's filmed by little pieces. But we as an audience, we connect emotionally with the editing and all that, and we just see the story and, oh gosh, and then we think of ourselves when did our parents forbid us to be a child? Were we asked, were we demanded to be an adult so young? Well, because that's how we relate emotionally to a story. That's the catharsis of the cinema and theater and all that. So it was not the real portrait of my mother. The portrait there is not the portrait of my real mother. So and the teddy bear, it was my teddy bear, but not my favorite teddy bear. I was very happy to leave it. I was very happy to leave it there. I left it buried there. I asked them to leave it there because I love animals. And in my child fantasy, it would be a very nice home for snakes because it was filled with wood. Okay. So I was telling this because when people ask me, oh, the trauma, your father told you, he says, no. In that scene, in that specific scene, my father is the child. El Topo in that scene is my father's father. That's a souvenir, that's a resume of my father's childhood, as his father didn't allow him to be a child and ask him to be tough and strong and adult as a little boy. You see? So my father was projecting himself there. So that's why I can relate to the son and all that. And so maybe my father projects himself also in the adult son that goes away with the little woman and the baby, like an opening to something else that would happen later. He had the project to make a movie called The Sons of the Topo that I was supposed to play that later, but he never got the money to do it, so now he made a comic book with it. So you can kind of read what follows after that, how the little baby grows and how the son of the Topo grows, and it's as grumpy as a Topo. The son that I played.
Do we have another question?
Do you still see me?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the night here almost.
So in the final scene of the film, El Topo dies and there are bees all over the place. What do you think that the meaning of the bees, if there's a meaning for the bees?
Oh, that's an image that is very much in the Torah.
Very much what?
The bees, the honey in the Torah. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Jewish and Christian symbols in the movie. But when he's on the bridge and he crucifies himself and all that, my father was using a lot of symbolic language, which is in a way he purifies himself. So all this anger and this shouting and this killing, in some way, because of I would interpret it like, if at the end of your life you have evolved, and if you were a violent, brutal person, but at the end of your life you managed to change and become an open-hearted person, compassionate, that blesses your past too. So, in the tradition of the Torah, I don't know if it's, I think it's in Genesis, it said, because you sin or something, because of your sins, you will be punished for 7 generations. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So, oh gosh, you're responsible of 7 generations. Whatever you fuck it up, 7 generations are going to pay. But if I remember well, I think in some comments of the Talmud, because they also transcript the oral tradition, and the oral tradition, because people have, well, we have tendency always to remember the bad stuff and not so much the good stuff. But in the oral tradition, it was said, if you do good, you will be rewarded for 1,000 generations. So the bad has consequences. The good has bigger consequences, right? So maybe we can interpret it like that, that if also, well, you see mysticism, you know, I'm not at all a religious person, but I love the Genesis, it's super interesting. And so in the translations we have here, I don't speak Hebrew and I don't speak ancient Hebrew, but the first word, Bereshit, is here is translated at the beginning, right? But it has all the translations. But in that word, inside that word, you also have the 3 letters to make end.
What?
You have beginning, inside, you have 7 letters, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Bereshit, but in the center, there's 3 letters that mean end, right? And so I've always thought, because I think of those myths like a very childish mentality, very grounded. So for me, if God is inside time, it's not God, because time contains God. It's not possible, right? If we had, I'm talking about this fairy tale. So, so God must be superior to time. If not, I believe in time. I don't believe in God, because I want to believe with the real boss, right? So, and in these little words, beginning and end in the same word, means that time is like an egg, right? It's everything is contained. So when you work on your present, you heal yourself. You're healing your past. Healing, like you have to understand. We have to see what does that mean. Is that the goal, to heal, or whatever, you know? So maybe the symbolism of that is that becoming what he became, like a monk, a Buddhist monk, that sacrifices himself also, like the Tibetan monks, because he does what the Tibet monks do, right? He burns himself in a meditation position, right? In a way, he purifies himself, so he purifies also his past. You know, for in the ancient Greek mythology, the way you die was very important. It gave sense to your whole life. So that moment at the end of the movie, how he renounces, gives up, gives sense to all the rest of, even to the violent character he was before. So there is a little message of hope after all.
So thank you, Brontis, and this is a nice note to end in. And
Thank you very much
for your time.